Let's talk about the components of fatness as a social identity. I get comments all the time basically asking who is fat, what makes somebody fat, which is effectively a way of asking who has claim to that space. And this is not a question that is exclusive to fatness. Other minority groups also have to contend with these sort of who's in, who's out nuances as well. In conversations about race, this question comes up with people who are multiracial and have claims to many different groups, or for people who have light skin and can be white passing. And then in conversations about sexuality, this question comes up for people who can be in straight passing relationships. People want to have these clear lines drawn in the sand so they know who's in and who's out. And while I understand the desire for that, I don't actually think it's helpful or accurate. I think a more helpful conversation is to actually talk about how people's experiences with oppression are different depending on where they fall on the spectrum of body size. And I'm going to make a video about that.
Fatness isn't an oppressed class of people, and comparing being fat to being a racial minority is just a way of appropriating the language and struggle of real minorities.
Hi, this is not true. I can understand how it seems like body size is a choice because that's what we're all taught. The truth is that our size is a lot more complex than that. In fact, diet and exercise are only a small component. Genetics, socioeconomic status, trauma, adverse childhood events, stress, and so many other factors impact our body size. As an eating disorder professional too, I can tell you that there are a lot of higher weight people who struggle with restrictive eating disorders. So they're eating very little, exercising a lot, and they're still in larger bodies. You cannot tell what someone eats, how much they eat, or how active they are just by the size of their body. And even though weight loss is possible, it's very, very, very unlikely to be long-term or permanent. So no, body size is not a choice. Even if it was, it still wouldn't justify widespread systemic discrimination. And losing weight should not be a prerequisite to be treated as a human being with dignity and respect.
So when the commenter said choice, they were saying that body size is within an individual's control, unlike race, sexual orientation, and other marginalizations that one has absolutely no control over. You said diet and exercise were only small components compared to trauma, income, and other factors, but those are not comparable. Diet and exercise are internal factors that have a direct effect on your body and its size. Trauma, income, and other factors are external factors. That means they secondarily affect the internal factors like diet and exercise. And while some people may have a harder time controlling their body weight because of the external factors, doesn't mean it's impossible. Therefore, it is something people have some amount of control over. And to the point that you said I can't look at someone and know how much they're eating. To a certain extent that is true. But at the extremes, like Tess Holiday's size, I can know that that person is overeating. Just like I can look at a 5'10" woman that weighs 70 pounds and know they're not eating enough.
My fellow fat people, especially my fellow small fats and mid-sized folks, we need to be careful now that the fat liberation movement is becoming more mainstream. And I don't mean the body positive movement, I mean the fat liberation movement. Let's not conflate the two because it's kind of gone off the rails. It is true that we as small fats and mid-sized people have experienced really horrible anti-fatness. Nobody is denying that. You have been treated terribly, and I'm so sorry and you don't deserve it. But we also need to remember that the bigger you are, the more anti-fatness you're likely to experience, and in much different ways, especially systemic ways and not just interpersonal ways. So yes, it's frustrating to not be able to find like cuter plus size clothes or like, you know, thin girls are taking the extra large clothes at the thrift shop. But if you're bigger than like a 2X or a 3X, you're not going to find anything at the thrift shop to begin with because people don't make clothes for you. You're not going to be able to shop in the plus size section because even the plus sizes don't go up to your size. It's worse when you're bigger. I mean, you can't fit in a standard airplane seat. The medical fat phobia is even worse. Most modern furniture, that kind of flat pack furniture, isn't designed to carry your weight, so you're afraid to even go to a friend's house because the chair might break out from underneath of you. Are those things that you experience as a small fat? You have experienced some terrible things. Nobody is denying you that, but you need to remember that this movement has to also include and preferably center bigger fat people.
Getting large enough to reach the sizes you are talking about, a 2X and 3XL size, means that you have bigger problems to deal with other than I might break a chair or thrift stores don't have my size. Those issues should be taken as a warning sign that you need to change, not a sign that the world needs to change to accommodate you.
I see a lot of people on social media who kind of built their whole brand or identity around being the fit one or the healthy one or the gym bro. If that is a central piece of your identity and a huge source of validation for you, I get it, because that is the world that we live in. There is so much emphasis on how we look. But if that is your primary source of validation, you may be playing a really dangerous game.
Yeah, that's kinda true. Nobody should place their entire identity on one pillar like fitness or nutrition.
That ends up hurting you in that. Especially if you're young, thin, and able-bodied, you will lose some of that privilege.
Wait, what privilege is going to be lost? The ability to eat healthy and work out? Or the privilege of being young? But weren't we talking about thin privilege?
It doesn't matter how much you're working out or eating carefully, or if you have the money and resources for fancy products and plastic surgeries.
So now we're on to plastic surgery. Alright.
Because you can't control the passing of time. That means you will get older, and our society is ageist as fuck. So if we're lucky to live a long time, we will all face that reality, even if you don't lose other forms of privilege.
So now we're just talking about ageism? What does this have to do with the original point about this as an identity?
Doing the work now to unlearn that belief system will help you not only for you to be less fazed by those changes when they inevitably do come, but it will also build a better system for the people around you and the people who don't look like you and don't hold the same body privileges as you.
I'm completely lost at this point. I think the point is that you will get older. You heard it from her first.
What are the 3 best things about being fat?
For me, the 3 best things about being fat include making fat art that I can see myself in and others see themselves in. Fat community, people in this community are fucking amazing. And number 3, I float like a motherfucker.
I include this one because I honestly found it really sad. I was interested in seeing what positives people got from being fat, but making art that looks like yourself is not an advantage of being fat because you could do that at any size. And anyone of any size can do that for another person at another size. A thin person can make thin art, a fat person can make thin art, a disabled person can make fat art. That in no way seems like a positive. Saying that you found community with other people is not a bad thing, but you can make a community around any identity or hobby, even if it's not healthy. Like the smoker community at work. And being able to float is a positive? Not even being able to swim. Just floating? If I were to give positives of being in my body, I would say being able to do backflips, being able to walk up 8 flights of stairs when the elevator is broken, something that aids my life in a way that other bodies couldn't. None of the things mentioned did that, and that's why I found it sad.
Hey, did you know that food has no moral value, so there's no such thing as a good or a bad food? They're all just calories and fuel for your body. So it's totally okay to try new things and to have treats. That being said, cherries are my favorite fruit, and when I saw these, I knew I had to try them. So if there's a snack that you haven't been giving yourself permission to try, or one of your favorite holiday foods, consider this your sign. I actually usually don't like Little Debbie's, they're usually too sweet, but these have like dark chocolate, and so it balances it out really well. Look at that. Nothing bad happened. I ate cake and I'm still deserving of love and respect. And most of all, so are you. I love you.
Food may not have moral value, but it definitely has nutritional value. Cutting out all food with little nutritional value may not be sustainable for most people, but we should be encouraging moderation, not encouraging people to let loose and eat whatever hyper-palatable, processed food they see around them. You say all calories are fuel, but the fuel you're giving your body by eating that cake and the fuel, aka nutrition, you'd get by eating a bowl of fruit and vegetables with the same calories is a night and day difference.
No, you're actually entirely wrong. There are 5 billion fucking clothes out there at thrift stores that you can buy as a thin person. You do not have to buy the clothes that are over a 3X and cut them down to your size. There are plenty of clothes already in your size. Don't come to my page with this bullshit. Because the reality is, when you take those clothes, those of us who are poor, who need to thrift, can't get those clothes. We don't have access to that because you've taken it, even though you have access to literally the entire store and literally every thrift store in existence. But most thrift stores don't have clothing over a 3X. And when they do, it's a very limited amount of items. So when your thin ass comes and steals that and takes that and uses it and cuts it down, it means that a fat, poor person couldn't access it. So we're talking about like literally having 0 clothing options for us. And you talking about taking the limited clothing options from larger fat people. It doesn't make any sense. Figure yourself out.
Strong sigh. First of all, let's address one of the main reasons why there's significantly less plus-sized clothes in thrift stores. It's not because there aren't a lot of plus-sized people in the world wearing plus-sized clothes. It's because when you are fat, your clothes wear out very quickly. Chub rub, excess sweat, stretching, all of those things lead to large clothes on plus-sized bodies wearing out enough that they cannot be donated in the end. So it's more of a consequence of being fat. Second, you are talking about the problem of thinner people thrifting clothes above a 3XL, and why that is a problem because poor people of that size need those clothes. If any of the people watching this have watched a lot of fat acceptance content, you may have noticed that none of the fat people that are the loudest in the fat positivity movement are actually poor. They're all at least middle class, and most of them are well educated. My point in mentioning this is that for actual poor people, people in poverty, being discriminated against for being fat is not one of their main issues. If you ask a woman in poverty that is a size 18 what her biggest issue is, not being able to find clothes her size in a thrift store has got to be near, the food bank didn't have fresh strawberries on their list of problems. I could go on forever about this topic, but that's enough for today. Have a great day.